Thank you for joining us tonight, and welcome to an hour-long celebration marking 70 years of News Channel 8. I'm Brenna Rose.
And I'm Becky Dixon.
And Becky, it is such an honor to co-host alongside you. Your broadcasting career not only spanned decades, but you were the very first local female sportscaster here at KTUL and within the market. You've been recognized as helping to pave the way for women in sports, so thank you.
Brenna, any success I've had in my career, whether at ABC Sports or beyond, I owe to Channel 8. This is the place that opened the door for me. So thanks for letting me be a part of tonight's celebration. For 70 years strong, News Channel 8 has come a long way since its start in 1954.
It certainly has. So let's travel back in time, taking a look at KTUL's history, where it all began in Muskogee, Oklahoma, to where it still stands today, right here on Lookout Mountain.
On September 18, 1954, this football game between OU and California was the first program ever seen on Channel 8. Back then, our call letters were KTVX, and the station was 50 miles away in Muskogee.
We had studios in what had once been an old Safeway store here in Muskogee, and they had vacated conveniently the store in the spring of 1954, and we started building a studio. It was sort of like flying blind without any instruments, I suppose you might say, because there were few people in the United States who had any experience at all in television.
At the time, ABC didn't have The Bachelor or American Idol. There just wasn't much in national programming. So the station had lots of airtime to fill and lots of work ahead.
So we had to fill 17 and a half hours a day with local programming and or films, Laurel and Hardy's and what have you. But it was a lot of fun. It was starting from scratch, you might say, and I'm still go around kind of with my chest out when Channel 8 turns up to be the first in the market, because it wasn't so in the beginning.
But when it came to creating a news department at KTVX, it was best described by a former news director as primitive. As we mentioned, the station was in Muskogee, but the film for news had to be processed and played out of Tulsa, a logistical nightmare.
I traveled between Tulsa and Muskogee because we didn't have the capability in those days of running film from Muskogee, our news film. We ran it from Tulsa, and I would get on the telephone and talk to a film editor and ask him what shots we had, and then we'd write our copy accordingly and have him put the film together.
And we had what now, looking back, seems like a terribly makeshift operation in a way, because we did film commercials. We drove back and forth to Muskogee to do live commercials, and we did slide commercials, because at that time there was no videotape. But it was very exciting.
And those live commercials back then were king.
For the very finest in radio enjoyment, folks, get a new 1954 Philco table radio.
No teleprompters, so the only thing that we would use would be the cheat sheets, as we called them. But then the director would get his cameras crossed, and it came time for you to look up for the prices, and the camera that had your card on it was clear across the studio. You couldn't see it.
Welcome to the Betty Boyd Show.
Many of these iconic ads aired on the Betty Boyd Show.
Hey ho, work.
Hey ho.
How are you? Wilson's More or Wilson's Biff. Remember, if the Wilson's certified label is on it, there's better meat in it.
But sometimes unexpected problems arose, like scenery collapsing on the host, or the crew pranking Don Woods.
They seemed to relish the thought of Don Woods breaking up while he was doing a commercial. So a time or two, they slipped some soap into the candy. I always used to take a bite of candy and tell the people how delicious this was, you know. And one particular night, he bit down on this candy that was loaded with soap, and the close-up expressions on his face were just hilarious. And of course, it broke everybody up, but Don didn't think it was too funny.
In the 50s, the city of Tulsa was on the verge of growth. It had 2 TV stations and was about to get a third.
1954 up to about 1957, 56, 57, when I made the application to move Channel 8 to Tulsa, we had lost a tremendous amount of money, and the commission, in their wisdom, could see that it would be very difficult to operate a station in Muskogee and cover a market like Tulsa. So they did give us permission, after a great deal of opposition, to move to Tulsa.
The station first moved to a building near 18th and Boulder, eventually taking its place atop Lookout Mountain.
Good morning and welcome to KTUL TV, Channel 8's Big Switch.
We want to extend a word of congratulations and best wishes to KTUL TV this morning upon the occasion of this major expansion of your broadcasting facilities.
Let's take a ride to the top of Channel 8's tower. Hold on. Here we go.
And the rest, as they say, is television history.
When we come back, Channel 8 journalists reported stories that impacted our daily lives. Stories of extreme tragedy, violent uprisings, and investigations of wrongdoing. We take a look back at the events that helped shape the last 7 decades. Author S.E. Hinton filmed her best-selling novel Tex here in the Sooner State. What city served as the location for the film? The answer when we come back. The motion picture Tex was filmed in and around Bixby, Broken Arrow, and Tulsa.
Throughout KTUL's 70-year history, our coverage of the big stories has been second to none. Stories like the Oklahoma City bombing, the Tulsa race massacre, and the riot at Big Mac.
From the very beginning, it's been our vision and purpose to deliver fair and balanced news and bring to light how those big stories impact your family and our community.
They were beaten, molested.
Where were you when you first heard about the Girl Scout murders? News Channel 8 was on the air.
The victims, who had arrived at Camp Scott only last night, were identified as 9-year-old Michelle Goose of Broken Arrow, 8-year-old Lori Lee Farmer of Tulsa, and 10-year-old Denise Milner, also of Tulsa.
3 girls murdered at a camp near Locust Grove, June 13, 1977.
All 3 were asleep in a tent like this one.
The news sent shockwaves through Green Country. The innocence of a community broken.
Did anybody else hear anything, Pete?
No one.
The girls wrote letters home that night.
I've met 2 new friends, Michelle Gousset and Denise Milner. I'm sharing a tent with them. It started raining on the way back from dinner.
Police arrested convicted rapist and escaped prisoner Jean Leroy Hart. To many, he was the obvious killer, but the jury returned a stunning verdict. Not guilty.
Jean, what do you think of capital punishment?
No comment.
Hart died of a heart attack behind bars. Decades later, DNA testing ruled out multiple suspects, but not Hart. To this day, the case remains open.
A prison riot in 1973 destroyed the maximum security prison in McAllister.
July 27, 1973, one of the worst prison riots in U.S. history right here in Oklahoma. Inmates inside the penitentiary in McAllister were fed up with overcrowding, violence, and poorly trained officers. They staged an uprising, took hostages, made demands, then set Big Mac on fire. A day later, the inmates released the hostages but controlled the prison for more than a week. When the Big Mac riot finally ended, 3 inmates were dead, 20 people hurt, and the damage was substantial. The death of Tulsa businessman Roger Wheeler. To hear this story, it sounds like the makings of a mob movie straight out of Hollywood. In fact, it inspired at least 2 movies.
Well, the gunman walked. Witnesses say he didn't run, walked back to the getaway car.
It may be an assassination.
It was May 27, 1981. Wheeler, former chairman of Telux and the owner of World Highlight, was gunned down inside of his car in the parking lot of Southern Hills Country Club. He'd uncovered an embezzlement scheme by members of Boston's Winter Hill Gang. 3 members of the gang were indicted for Wheeler's death. Steve Fleming and Johnny Martirano did time. Gang leader Whitey Bulger fled the country, one of the FBI's top 10 fugitives, until his capture in 2011. After a 16-year manhunt, he was discovered hiding out in Santa Monica, California. Bulger was murdered in prison at the age of 89.
I don't know what it was. At the federal court did it. It must have been a bomb. We're supposed to have at least 25 to 30 children in this area. We've only found about 4 or 5.
On April 19, 1995, Timothy McVeigh parked a Ryder truck outside of the Alfred P. Murrah building in downtown Oklahoma City. Workers had just arrived for the day, along with small children in a daycare. The truck, loaded with explosives, took down the north face of the building, killing 168 people inside. First responders and journalists raced to the scene. America's first act of homegrown terror right in our backyard. Our KTUL crew stayed in Oklahoma City for weeks covering the story. It took a toll.
You know, you try to push it back because you have a job to do, you have a story to tell, and you have the facts to try to get right. But at the end of the day, you still have a very emotional toll that has been given you.
Okay, look at how this tree leans this way.
You can tell the bomb was over there. McVeigh captured and found guilty in federal court. He died by lethal injection in 2001. His conspirator, Terry Nichols, convicted and will spend the rest of his life in prison.
That legacy lives on, and it lives in each of us that call Oklahoma home. The Oklahoma standard didn't stop at the borders of our state. It affected the nation.
The day before Memorial Day 2002.
Appeared to be just one of those awful accidents, terrible that had occurred on Memorial Day.
A busy travel day for many families. Catastrophe. The road disappeared before them.
And then your world just disappears. Not only your world, but everybody with you.
The I-40 bridge collapsing in Weber's Falls, struck by a barge. A 500-foot stretch, 4 lanes dropped into the water below. Crews worked around the clock to retrieve people from the Arkansas River. 14 people died. The event changing the way that Oklahoma protects its river crossings.
Really large steel drums that are buried in front of the piers, and they're filled with either concrete or some other material that's packed into them. And that helps protect the piers.
Changes, he says, took Oklahoma from the bottom of the list for highway bridge conditions to the top 5 nationwide.
That's what killed it down.
In far northeastern Oklahoma sits the EPA's largest Superfund site, 40 square miles, one of America's worst when it comes to toxic waste. Mining towns like Pitcher, Cardin, and Commerce were once booming.
In good times, well, they came to an end in 1948. That's when Pitcher started to die.
When mining operations stopped, what was left behind was dangerous and even deadly. Children with neurological disorders and cancer. Toxic mine water seeped into the ground, Tar Creek and Grand Lake. Large sinkholes opened up and chat piles 200 feet high littered the area. The EPA condemned the land, buying out homes and businesses. News Channel 8 drone footage shows Pitcher is now a ghost town. It no longer exists as a community. 30 years later, state, tribal, and federal officials are still working to clean up the area.
As a black man, I can't go home tomorrow and change the color of my skin.
The death of George Floyd by white officers in 2020 sparked outrage and divided our nation. It was the 99th anniversary of the Tulsa race massacre. A peaceful demonstration soon took a dramatic turn.
Okay. All right. Hold on.
Hundreds of people blocked off traffic on 244. Tensions built, and eventually a truck pulling a horse trailer plowed into the crowd, injuring several.
It's a large trailer has gone through. Okay, people are running towards the trailer.
Our crew caught up in it all.
Hey, we've got pepper balls.
Later, the crowd marched on Brookside, damaging businesses and cars. Police responded with tear gas and pepper balls.
Kim, I just got shot, with a pepper ball.
Former KTUL reporter Ethan Hutchins remembers it well.
My photographer Jacob and I got hit in the face, and unfortunately we couldn't breathe for a little bit. We had to take a break from the live coverage so we could kind of compose ourselves. I worked 8 years in TV, and that night was by far the craziest, most chaotic story I've ever covered.
Tell us what you're experiencing right now.
Burning. Oh, it burns so bad. It's in my throat. I can barely breathe.
Police eventually were able to control the crowd, and the protests came to an end.
The medic says my foot is broken.
The DA refused to file charges against the driver of the truck and horse trailer on 244. Probably one of the longest running stories that we've covered here at K2L is the race massacre of 1921, a story that continues to shape Tulsa's future and spark conversations more than 100 years later. For 2 days, Black Wall Street was under attack. A white mob set Greenwood on fire, destroying homes, businesses, and killing countless. A search of Oaklawn Cemetery uncovered remains in unmarked graves.
We just wanted to find these victims and reunite them with their families.
Through forensic analysis, the first victim, veteran C.L. Daniel, identified in July. In 1921, Daniel was traveling cross-country through Tulsa by train. His family never knew what happened to him until now.
I am so very humbled and honored to stand here today to witness this time in history and this historic moment as it is.
Meanwhile, the survivors and their families are still seeking justice and reparations. A legal tug-of-war with the city of Tulsa all these years later, struck down by the state Supreme Court.
We have 2 survivors left. One is here. This court that I stand in front of, we stand in front of, has the opportunity to do what's right for the first time in 102 years.
Attorneys just recently asking President Joe Biden and the U.S. Department of Justice to intervene.
I'm hopeful that many generations to come will learn about, know about, and remember the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, and also that you shouldn't give up.
Up next, from the News Channel 8 archives, how Gusty got his name in the words of beloved meteorologist Don Woods.
Well, I was forced to go out and learn to draw a cartoon to get the job. Well, he gave me the job, and then I found out I was the only one that applied.
And from freezing cold to extreme heat, a look back over the last 70 years and the meteorologists and reporters who are on the front lines of life-threatening weather. Who was the brainchild behind 2 memorable promo campaigns called Eight's the Place and The News Guys? The answer when we come back. The News Guys and Eight's the Place came from the creative genius of Carl Bartholomew. He was the promotions director and played Uncle Zeb on Uncle Zeb's Cartoon Camp.
Welcome back to our 70th anniversary special. KTUL has been the green country weather leader for many decades. Joining me now to look back at the most memorable weather events is meteorologist Mike Collier. Mike, you've been part of the Channel 8 family for many years.
I have. That's right. I started as a weather intern back in 2000. The following year, I was hired as the morning show meteorologist. And the Weather Center is my home for the next 16 years. And let me tell you, it was a wild ride right up here on Lookout Mountain.
It usually is, and you're even talking about the weather and probably other things too, right?
Exactly.
Hey, we're going to start where it all began, though. September 1954 marked a milestone in broadcasting when the first television meteorologist in Oklahoma appeared on KTVX in Muskogee.
We were real nervous going on the first day, if you'll remember.
Well, everything was live. Commercials, everything is live. You made a mistake, you just hung out there in front of everybody, and live commercials, live news, live weather. And my weather set was a piece of chalk and a blackboard.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Although Don's weather set was rudimentary, his engaging style and warm personality captivated viewers.
And to the north of this front, very cold weather.
To enhance his weather presentations, he introduced an iconic cartoon character named Gusty.
And here he is saying that mild weather.
Don's famous Gusty sketches brought life and humor to every forecast. Here's how Gusty got his name straight from the man who created him.
So we thought we'd just let the people that watch the station name the little character. So we had a big contest, and everybody in eastern Oklahoma could send in a name for this little cartoon character, and we had a drawing, and Gusty finally won.
The couple who won the contest received a huge box of groceries. Back in the early days, commercials were done live. Needless to say, this resulted in some memorable bloopers.
One of the funniest things that happened is when I was advertising baking powder and telling people how light the biscuits were. Well, unbeknownst to me, they'd taken a black thread and a needle, and they'd put the thread through a biscuit and looped it over the rafters in the studio, When I began to talk about these light, fluffy biscuits, this biscuit began to float right up in front of my face, up into the air. So they were just trying to enhance the commercials, I believe, and it turned out to be kind of funny. That went on for a little while, and then we really got serious and cut it out. But it was a lot of fun while we did it, and I don't know if it sold more products or not, but at least we had a good time doing them.
Even after retiring 34 years later, Don stayed engaged with his art, painting with watercolors, up until his death in 2012.
From the early days of weather forecasting to modern times, we have faced a myriad of extreme weather events, and Channel 8 meteorologists were always there, covering the worst Mother Nature had to offer. Do you remember where you were when extreme weather struck green country? On Memorial Day 1984, Tulsans watched helplessly as 6 to 15 inches of rain fell in just 8 hours, resulting in devastating floods. 14 lives were lost and hundreds were injured. The damage was estimated at $180 million at the time, a figure that would be much higher today. KTUL meteorologists and journalists provided nonstop coverage of the flooding and its aftermath for days. This tragedy led the city to implement a comprehensive flood prevention and warning system, which has become one of the most effective public flood mitigation models in the nation. The summer of 2011 marked one of the hottest periods in Oklahoma history. There was a record number of consecutive 100-degree days, breaking a record that had stood since the Dust Bowl era. Tulsa came close to an all-time high when temperatures reached 113 degrees. Just a year later, extreme drought conditions wreaked havoc on dry vegetation. Dry and windy conditions sparked a massive blaze that swept across Creek County. Manford residents still vividly remember the wildfire that ravaged their homes and properties in 2012.
So right now, you do consider yourself lucky, although we got a flare-up going on right there.
Yeah. Oh, no.
The fire scorched nearly 100 square miles, making it the largest wildfire in recent state history, according to a fire department spokesperson.
I've never seen anything like it in my life.
Lessons learned from the massive blaze included improving firefighting resources with better equipment and training. Residents were encouraged to use fire-resistant plants and materials in landscaping to reduce the risk of fires spreading to structures. The community's spirit and determination were essential in the rebuilding process and moving forward from the disaster. From extreme heat to freezing cold, Christmas 1987 brought one of the worst ice storms of the season, dumping freezing rain that snapped power lines and trees.
Like a war zone, and you can't stand up on it.
In Tulsa, 25,000 homes were left without heat and electricity for 2 days. The ice storm was so severe, it brought down the station's 1,900-foot broadcasting tower, which was one of the tallest TV towers in the state.
It's almost unbelievable. I mean, I had worked at that site. You know, it's an almost 2,000-foot structure, and to think that it had totally collapsed to the ground, it was unbelievable until you got out there and saw the aftermath of all the steel on the ground.
The heavy ice sheared off bolts, collapsed the fence, and twisted the guide wires. Eventually, the station's signal was restored on cable, but viewers who watched over the air were without Channel 8 broadcasts until a temporary tower could be built. Fast forward to February 2011, when a massive blizzard dumped 14 inches of snow in Tulsa. This storm broke records for the most snow in February and the most snow from a single storm. Wind gusts reached up to 40 miles an hour, making travel nearly impossible. Another record was set on February 3rd for the lowest temperature, which plummeted to -6 degrees. Wind chills reached 25 below zero, making it extremely dangerous to be outside. Okay, so apparently it can snow a lot in Tulsa, but it doesn't happen very often. But that one storm, Mike, tell me about your memory of that night.
I'll never forget that. So February of 2011, we had a blizzard and most of the city was shut down. So I'm here working 24/7. That's just what we do in the weather world, right? So I went home and finally got home, got some great news. My wife's like, hey, we're pregnant. And so it was our first child. Wow. Sophie would be born later that year. But it was such a memorable experience going from the blizzard and covering all these days in and days out to go home and find out some wonderful news. But then we had more snow. So I was like, honey, congratulations. We'll check later, and I got to go back to work. But that's just how it goes in this business.
It sure is. You know, these big weather events, we remember them, especially when you work in a place for many years. You see people in the community, and you say, yeah, you remember that blizzard in 2011? Yeah. And it was the same year, Mike, that that big heat wave hit in the summer. Yeah. So you guys had to experience ago, she's pregnant. She's dealing with the news of a blizzard. You had the city shut down. And then later that same year, we get this big heat wave.
Yeah, I really felt for her because there she is, you know, 80% through the pregnancy, and we're going through the hottest summer on record. And I really felt for her. It was 2011 summer, goes down as one of the hottest ever on record, extremely hot, numerous 100 days. Humidity was miserable. It just was a memorable year for weather events. But luckily, by October, we had a beautiful girl, and she's been awesome since. So
well, that's
it works
wonderful.
out. Yeah.
You know, these big weather events, they do impact our families too. And there's one memory that I have from working in Nebraska for many years in Lincoln. My wife was also pregnant with our third child, and we hadn't picked out a name yet. And a tornado warning was issued unexpectedly. No one was at the station. It was a weekend, and it was a late morning, so it wasn't a normal time. So I had to run in there, and I felt bad leaving my wife, my other two kids. She's pregnant. She's in our little shelter. And we got through the whole thing. And then at the end of it, I said, you know, I came up with a good name for our daughter for this.
What's that?
Mariah.
Okay.
Which means wind.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
And we named, my wife didn't like it, but she said we can name her middle name will be Mariah. So it is. And my daughter, Alexis Mariah, doesn't like the name Mariah. So I'm like, I'm the only one. But it's just funny how these stories come about, the big weather events impacting our lives. And hey, congratulations on Sophie.
Oh, thank you very much.
You got it, buddy. All right, well, thanks for joining us for this portion of the 70th anniversary special. We'll be right back.
When we come back, live television shows in the early days.
And it was kind of seat-of-the-pants television, which made it very exciting.
From Uncle Zeb's cartoon camp to Mr. Zing and Tuffy, a look behind the curtain when 8 was the place for live TV. What Oklahoma sportscaster was named co-host of ABC's Wide World of Sports? The answer when we come back. Becky Dixon was the first woman co-host of ABC's Wide World of Sports, alongside Frank Gifford.
From the very beginning of Channel 8, families gathered around the TV to watch iconic ABC shows like The Wonderful World of Disney, The Rifleman, Lawrence Welk, and Maverick, just to name a few.
In those days, Channel 8 had several live variety shows that are still remembered today. Here's Bert Malalo with a look at some of the programs that began our station's tradition of being the place to tune in.
As an advertising slogan, 8's the place fires on all cylinders. It's catchy, memorable, and as a phrase, open-ended, leaving it up to the viewer to finish the sentence. So while it's obviously the place for news, weather, and sports, for decades it was also the place for live variety shows.
Hey, we've been looking for you.
Uncle Zeb's show was the place to be if you were a kid in the 70s.
On the air from January 1970 until June 79. Its star was Carl Bartholomew.
You have to enjoy it or you can't do it day after day. And it was a 5-day-a-week live, which is hard to find anymore, live children's television. But we did it live, so if it was right, it was right. If it was wrong, it was wrong. But it was done, and we'd try for a comeback the next day.
Hey! Before Uncle Zeb, 8 was the place for Mr. Zing and Tuffy with John Chick.
Mr. Zing and Tuffy was a lot of fun, and it was kind of seat-of-the-pants television, which made it very exciting. Now, we did plan a lot of things, but of course, especially when you're dealing with about 35 children on each show, you really don't know what's going to happen.
Are we on?
It was a very enjoyable experience, one that I'll always remember fondly, but quite honestly wouldn't want to do again.
Chick also had an early morning variety show.
There again was seat-of-the-pants television. When you're live television, you just can't beat it. There's something about actually being on camera and knowing that you can't do it over. You have to keep going, no matter what. It's, well, you can't beat it.
Chick's draw was so strong that reportedly, when the president of ABC visited Tulsa to see how come Good Morning America was being preempted for Chick's program, he became a convert after seeing it in action.
Welcome to the Betty Boyd Show.
Channel 8 was also the place where Betty Boyd became a household name in Tulsa in the 60s.
Hey, Jim and John, how about just a little bit from you now, and then we might take it all out with a reminder that everyone can join us here at 12 o'clock, Monday through Friday on Channel 8.
And before that, Channel 8 was the place for another children's program.
The first was hosted by noted Creek Indian artist A.C. Blue Eagle. 90 minutes, live, 5 days a week.
8's been the place for several pioneers of local television, a tradition of boldly going live, flying by the seat of their pants, and inevitably, one after another, working their way into the hearts of viewers.
I'll be looking for you.
Bert Malalo, News Channel 8.
Next, Bob Hauer created the Waiting Child news segment to find permanent homes for foster children. He's successfully found homes for hundreds of children.
God has placed me where I am now with the people that I was supposed to be with so I can be where I am at today.
Stay with us. Sportscaster Chris Lincoln made his mark here on Channel 8, but went on to do play-by-play for many national sports. What sport led him to Dubai, Hong Kong, and Singapore? The answer when we come back. What sport led Chris Lincoln to Dubai, Hong Kong, and Singapore? He served as host and presenter at many prestigious horse races. He's known around the world as the voice of the thoroughbreds.
Former owner of K2L, James C. Lake, took great pride over the years, knowing our station was committed to taking care of this great community of ours. No matter how big or small the effort, telethons, live auctions like Conchi, bell ringing for the Salvation Army, and collecting blankets and toys and school supplies. We've got your back, Green Country.
But the effort we're probably most proud of course, K2L's Waiting Child program, bringing so many foster children in need together with a loving family.
Former News Channel 8 anchor and reporter Kim Jackson takes a look back at the legacy of Waiting Child.
Over the years, News Channel 8's Waiting Child helped thousands of children in Oklahoma get adopted. The stories were life-changing for so many, and it all started with legendary KTUL anchor Bob Hauer.
Ron is currently in a foster home. He wants very much to find permanent parents. Ron is a waiting child.
KTUL anchor Bob Hauer started Waiting Child in 1980. Bob reportedly wrote the lyrics to the Waiting Child song in just 5 minutes, and recording artist Olita Adams sang it so beautifully.
Nobody's perfect, and that includes me. But I hope when you see me, you like what you see. I'm a waiting child.
Bob's stories of warmth and compassion helped more than 400 kids find their permanent homes, including Christy Edwards DeSonia. DeSonia was a waiting child in 1986.
We met Dolly in the lobby of the Camelot Hotel. We call her Dolly, but actually she has no name and no parents.
In 2021, Christy told me that brief moment in our newscast changed her life forever.
When you see that video and think back over your life, what do you think?
Like, God has placed me where I am now with the people that I was supposed to be with so I can be where I am at today.
Bob Hauer retired in 1986, and another legendary KTUL anchor later picked up the torch. Carol Lambert took great pride in the program, filing numerous reports over the years, helping even more children get adopted.
At his foster home, he enjoys their dogs, especially the one named Pepsi.
Pepsi looks like a can of pop.
Now, how does a dog look like a can of pop?
It's really fat.
She, Bob Hauer, and KTUL even received a proclamation from the city of Tulsa and the state for their service and commitment to the Waiting Child program.
First, I used to ask, what's their background? And after a while, I heard so many depressing stories that I said, don't tell me anymore, because I had lost a child, and I knew that as long as they were alive and somebody loved them, that's all they needed. That's all any of us need, right?
Exactly.
I'm waiting.
Up next, 70 years of unforgettable triumphs, titles, and trophies. Join sports director TJ Eckert and renowned sportscaster Chris Lincoln as they take us on a journey through the most iconic moments in sports history.
And welcome back. From the moment Channel 8 hit the airwaves, sports have reigned supreme, and 70 years later, that legacy lives on. Joining me now is the legendary sportscaster Chris Lincoln. Hey, Chris.
And not been here all 7 decades.
Good. That's
but I'm
good.
looking forward to being with you today to relive some memorable moments, teams, athletes that have made their mark on 7 decades of sports history right here on KTUL.
The story of KTUL can't be told without sports being at the forefront.
Preview of the state high school football.
Our 70-year history covered in triumphs, titles, and trophies. Our story itself literally beginning with sports. September 18th, 1954, the first program aired on News Channel 8, a football game. The number 2 Oklahoma Sooners beating 12th-ranked Cal 27-13 in Berkeley, right in the middle of Bud Wilkinson's historic winning streak. Six of OU's 7 national championships happening in the KTUL era, the latest of those coming in 2000, when Josh Heupel led Bob Stoops and company to a title against Florida State, that moment coming full circle this year when the former Sooner QB returns to Norman for the first time as a head coach of an opposing team when Tennessee visits OU. We've watched Bedlam grow into a nationally respected rivalry, with the Cowboys pulling off thrilling upsets, or OU using the game as a springboard on a national championship run.
That's McCanty, got a step on his man Harmon. Nice feed. McDougal scored.
20 years after our beginning in 1974, in that magical season by head coach Ken Trickey and Oral Roberts, then the Titans, putting Tulsa on the map with a historic run to the Elite Eight, nearly reaching the Final Four before losing to Kansas in overtime inside the Mabee Center.
Washington, off the mark, and it's over!
Nearly 50 years later, another Cinderella story at 81st and Lewis, Max Asmus and Kevin O'Banner becoming America's team with 2 thrilling wins against Ohio State and Florida in the NCAA tournament, making the Sweet 16 as a 15 seed. And just last year, a trip to Omaha and the College World Series by the Golden Eagle baseball program, their first since 1978. Ryan Fulmer's team finishing with one of the best records in the entire country.
You know, they're going to go down as one of the better teams that's ever played at our university. So, you know, 10 years from now, they're going to bring their kids back to here and say, I was here at one point.
And what about the Golden Hurricane, the little D1 school at 11th and Harvard, but known for legends of the game like wide receiver Steve Largent, or college basketball coaching royalty with names like Tubby Smith, Nolan Richardson, and Bill Self, who led TU to an Elite Eight in 2000.
Let us be the one.
Our story continues with the legacy of local sports coverage. Our own Chris Lincoln and Bob Carpenter, the face of the Tulsa Roughnecks Soccer Club, both home and away, traveling to games outside of Oklahoma with matches broadcast right here on News Channel 8. That emphasis on local sports includes triumphs, of course, but also tragedies, like the plane crash on January 27, 2001 in Colorado, involving members of the Oklahoma State basketball program, 10 people losing their lives. The Remember the 10 game continuing to be a yearly tradition for the Cowboy program. We've seen Tulsa become a coveted city to host big-time sporting events, including one of golf's great tests at Southern Hills Country Club. 8 major championships held at 61st and Lewis, including a record 5 PGA championships. The first in 1970, broadcast here on ABC. Tiger Woods, of course, winning on the Hill in 2007. And most recently, Justin Thomas hoisting the Wanamaker Trophy after a dramatic playoff victory in 2022. So when people think of Tulsa, they think of a passionate sports town. And when people think about the history of KTUL, our legacy and tradition of covering those sports, no doubt goes unnoticed.
When we come back, sports director TJ Eckert and Chris Lincoln recount stories behind some of sports' most memorable moments.
Well, Chris, certainly a ton of great stories over the 70-year history here at KTUL. What are maybe some other ones that stand out to you that weren't in that package?
There's some great memories. I think back to the impact Nolan Richardson had. Coming out of the University of Tulsa in 1981, and basketball was down. Took us that first year to the NIT, and I'm doing the play-by-play of the championship game in Madison Square Garden.
Oh, yeah.
I was wearing polka dot shirts and stuff, and great time back in the 80s, early on.
Nolan Richardson came back and coached the WNBA team that was here a little bit later, too, which his impact lasted a really long time here. I mentioned it. I want you to hit on it. Tulsa Roughnecks. I don't think people realize how cool that was, you guys getting to do that.
Great time. It really brought Tulsa to major league standing in the nation. To go on in the soccer ball, and I was credited Bob Carpenter did a great job and kind of schooled me up on soccer to learn that. But we did a lot of telecasts, a lot of coverage of Roughneck soccer, and won a soccer bowl, and a great championship time, great time for the city.
And then we talked about the national championships. Didn't even hit on the fact you hosted Barry Switzer's coach's show on here as well.
Well, you know, the great thing about Channel 8, we did everything in sports. I hosted Barry Switzer's show on Sunday, Jim Stanley's Oklahoma State show on Sunday, F.A. Dry's Tulsa show on Sunday. We carried Lou Holtz's show from Arkansas, our sister KTV over there.
Man.
All the sports there. And I covered my first 2 years at Channel 8 were 74, 75. And I was a Missouri Tiger. I'm not an Oklahoma Sooner fan. But as soon as I arrived here, Barry says, you're going to like this. And we go back-to-back national champions. And I became a fan pretty quickly there. So great memories. And, of course, Barry Switzer, so many stories, which I can't tell here. But a lot of fun with him, too.
And then we talked about the legacy of anchors here. Becky Dixon was another one, and we're going to have a chat with her on YouTube.
She was, and I brought her on and convinced Tom Goodgame we needed a female sportscaster here. We already had 3 on our staff, had 3 sports photographers, 8 to 10 minutes for sports a night.
What is that?
Oh, fantastic.
Can't even fathom.
Back in the good old days there. But she did a fabulous job. Went on, obviously. I worked at ABC Sports, Wide World of Sports. I went on to ESPN, and a lot of our guys have gone to some great things, too, so I'm proud of that.
You're not going to believe this, Chris, but we're running out of time. Weather needs it, I'm assuming is what the case is.
I'm ahead of the weather. It's hot.
Well, back with more, hopefully not weather, when we come back.
When we come back, some final thoughts from tonight's hosts, Brenna Rose and Becky Dixon. Stay with us.
From Lookout Mountain to every city in Green Country, News Channel 8 has been on the ground covering news in communities and neighborhoods.
And for our journalists, it's not just a job, it's a calling. Through words and pictures, they inform, educate, entertain, and inspire. Our journalists have a passion to tell stories about real life and provide information to help you make informed decisions. Our team, both on and off air, has felt compelled to show up for you and your family, even if that means missing holidays or our own family gatherings. For 70 years, we've held a mirror up to our community, reflecting its triumphs and tragedies. It's what we do.
As we said back in the 70s, 8's the place, and it will be for another 70 years. Thank you for joining us as we took a look back at where we came from.
And we hope you'll stay with us as we move forward into the future. Good night, and stay tuned to News Channel 8 at 10.